since you did not have good grades, you cannot end up in a good university, which is absolutely bullshit. Then even after low grades, you can end up in a good university.
Failing to meet the targeted marks.
If I have bad grades, can I still go to college?
Really upset about a poor grade.
What should you do? What should be the entire process? Let's talk about that. Okay, so this is one of those questions which is the least asked for, but should have been the most asked for question. Because my DMs are always like, Murad, I got into XYZ University. What do you think about XYZ University? And majority of the times I'm like, dude, I don't even know the name of this XYZ University. And the student is like, okay, I even don't know the name of this university, but since my grades were not good, that is why I ended up choosing this. So let me get this straight. Just because your grades were not good in your bachelor's or in your class 12th, you decided to go to a university which no one knows in the entire world. Why? Because most probably some counselor told you, or maybe you have this inherent belief that since you did not have good grades, you cannot end up in a good university, which is absolutely bullshit. Your grades have something to do with your future. Definitely, I'll not outrightly say, okay, it has nothing to do with your future. It definitely has something to do with your future. But then even after low grades, you can end up in a good university. So what is the importance of grades in your entire application? So let's suppose there is a pie graph in which 100% is the entire application process. Out of this, 15% goes towards your GMAT or GRE, the exams that you write. And then rest 25% goes towards the SOP, statement of purposes, that you write. And then the next 15% goes towards the letter of recommendations. So the essays, SOPs and your examination scores, that only accounts for 55% of your application. Rest, you're left with 45% of your application. Now, in this 45% application, you might have an interview that would count for another 20% of your application. Unless you do not have an interview, then rest of the things will come here. So instead of 55, rest of the things will be worth 75, and this would not be there. But if they have an interview will get 20% importance. Then you're just left with 25%. Now out of this 25%, your extracurricular activities accounts for another 10%. What you have done accounts for another 10%. And amongst all of this, if you have going for an MBA, another importance goes towards your work experience also. So the importance of your grades is not more than 10 to 15%. Definitely not more than 10 to 15%. And if you're thinking that, oh, it's just 10 to 15%, then with low grades I should go to a very good university. Actually, that also doesn't happen. But then if you have everything else strong, with low grades, you can definitely do something. Now let's suppose your grades are less than 7. How do you compensate for that? Now you now understand that out of the entire pie, your importance of grades is just 10 to 15%, but still 10 to 15% is a major part of your application. How do you compensate for that? So there are few things that you should be focusing on. The first thing that you should definitely be focusing on is a standardized test score. So what does a standardized test score help you with? Let's suppose you did not score well in your college. Why? Because your college does not give a lot of marks. Because if you look at fields like English honors, they do not end up giving a lot of marks. So in that case, you can compensate the low score that you have in your college or in your school with a standardized test score. And you can say that since in your college you were not getting a lot of good grades, that the reason for that was our marking was not lenient at all. And that is the reason why you can look at my SAT scores, you can look at my GMAT or a GRE score, and it's so good. Now, if I ask you at this point, do you know there is one university in the entire world in which in the ethics class, no student has ever got full marks? Which university would that be? It's actually Harvard. And you know, in Harvard ethics class, B is considered really good. In India, we think B is like average score, right? But in Harvard, B is considered as the best score. Now, why does that happen? Because their marking is not lenient at all. And at the same time, if you look at marking of Delhi University, I know one of my friends who ended up writing an entire song and ended up getting good grades. I mean, he had a 7 in that and he had written a song in the paper. So you cannot compare these two education systems, right? But then if you have a standardized test score, you can compare both of these. If both of the people are giving GMAT scores, and let's suppose I have a person who has a GMAT score of 730 and a college GPA of, let's suppose, 6.5. And then I have a student who has a GMAT score of 510 and a GPA of, let's suppose, 9. What am I to assume? I am to assume that this person is getting grades in a very bad university. I mean, they're so lenient that they're giving a person who has 500s mein GMAT score a very good score. But on this side, oh my god, this is a smart kid. And the university he's studying in does not give lenient marking. So even with a bad score in your college, you can end up getting a good admission if your standardized test scores are good. So I'm 100% sure that all of you guys know that getting into Harvard is very difficult, right? And Harvard has an acceptance rate of somewhere around 5 to 6%. But what if I tell you that if you come from these 3 consultancy companies, getting into Harvard, the chances shoot up to somewhere around 12%. That's approximately double, right? Now, having work experience definitely helps you get into any university of the world. Why? Because first of all, the university wants a mixed bunch of people. Now, if you're going for a course that will definitely not have a lot of people with work experience, you will be the only person coming with work experience. That will definitely give you an edge. Now, that work experience can be for any course. That can also be for an MIM, which does not usually require a work experience. But then that work experience will demonstrate that yes, you can cope up with the entire syllabus, and you will be an asset, you will be a good name for the university once you graduate. You'll get the job, because if you were able to find a job, if you were able to find employment before getting into the university, why would you not get a job after graduating from here? So the university admissions team thinks like that also. So having hands-on work experience always is a beneficial thing if you have low grades. Next thing that you can do is you can use your statement of purposes to justify your low grades. Let's suppose I have low grades in my college, and the first line or the second line that second paragraph of my essay states that I was the topper of my university, scoring 6.5 because 6.5 was the best score in my entire university. What does that tell you about me as a student? That tells you that the rest of the students did not score well. It was me who scored well, right? So you can compensate for a low score in your statement of purpose. Now, yeah, definitely not everyone would be scoring 6.5 and being the best in their class. But what you can do is you can share that at the time of my college exams, I was also working on a startup, and this is the startup that I was working on. I raised a funding of XYZ amount. I made a sale of XYZ amount, or XYZ thing. So you can compensate for your low grades by explaining them in your statement of purpose also. That is something people end up missing, but you have to do that. If you are low on your grades, you have to do that. Fourth thing, which sometimes helps students, but majority of the times I am not that big of a fan of it, is getting a letter of recommendation from the teacher in which you did not score well. Now, that has helped some of the students, but majority of the times it just does not help many students. But yeah, I had to tell you this, that this is one more thing that you can do. Let's suppose you did not score well in English. You can get a letter of recommendation from your English teacher saying that he's a very bright student, and whatever happened, that teacher can explain that. And that would be a good letter of recommendation, because that would be such a person-specific letter of recommendation. The letter of recommendations that I go through are so bad. I mean, they do not even talk about the student's profile, nothing like that. It's just a general letter of recommendation downloaded from the internet. So please don't do that. If you can get a specific letter of recommendation, let's suppose in a paper that you did not do well and the teacher is saying that this is a bright student, that might help you even more. And finally, yes, you can also show your extracurricular activities. That would obviously include your startup, which I already talked about, but then yeah, you could be good at cricket. You can say that I was the under 19 cricket captain or something like that. That can also be used. But the fourth and fifth point, I'm not that big of a fan of, but first 3 points are a major thing that you can use in your application and should definitely help you. Now, if you found this video insightful and helpful, then I would highly recommend you to watch this video. Like, it's a really good video. And thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe to the channel also.